Good morning to you all. Warmest welcome to the 12th series of the webinar Innovation, Need of the Hour. Let me start by thanking Mr. Rao for extending his warm welcome and for also hosting S2R at the first venue, which is at the CII Center, which is where this is coming to you from. So, the topic of the day, Innovation, Need of the Hour. Innovation. The story of innovation actually is as old as humanity and as old as evolution. We don't expect to cover or encompass the entire, but yes, we wish to bring in certain elemental and key principles that drive the process of innovation and how now it has become an imperative. And let's move on to the topic of the day, which is innovation. Now, innovation, like I said, is as old as evolution. It is basically the story of mankind. Innovation has synonyms like change, alteration, revolution, upheaval, transformation, and metamorphosis. Those 6 synonyms have been underlined for one particular reason, in so much that they actually epitomize what innovation has come to mean in our times. Innovation is actually the key fundamental issue of the day. It is an area where we have been forced to reflect inwardly, and it is a point which is absolutely critical within organizations today. So what is innovation? Innovation, one of the all-encompassing definitions, is that it adds and leads to creation of social and economic value. Besides that, innovation is fundamental to the human spirit, and if you were to just step back and reflect upon that, innovation predicates evolution. If there were to be no creativity, no evolution from the first stone wheel to the wheel as we know it today, there would have been no progress. So it is fundamental to our human spirit. Yet, it is one of the biggest challenges of the day. This is the face and image of a man and a person who has epitomized innovation in our times. Steve Jobs defines innovation as that which distinguishes between a leader and a follower. How true is that? You can either light the torch, emblazon it, make sure it leads forward and tears through darkness, or you can follow a torchbearer. Those are the options in front of us. What is even more critical is that our times are currently clearly distinguished by the quick share of information. Quick share of information usually leads to change in pattern, and change in pattern and trends defines the flavor of the day. So for us, it is even more imperative that we understand what we ought to do to take and go to the next level. So, what is innovation all about? Well, innovation happens where the mind is without fear of failure. This is an image of one of the most amazing examples of human creativity, human ingenuity, and human genius. This is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, beset by the works of some of the greatest Renaissance painters of our times, from Michelangelo to Botticelli, and it is replete with classical details. Yet, we must understand that innovation and creativity are nurtured in a cradle of fearlessness, which doesn't look towards conforming and always will go against the trend of the day. An innovative mindset will always aim to create new vistas, break boundaries, and create new paradigms for whatever reason. And often I think about the Sistine Chapel and wonder how it would have gone if there was a fear of pressure or fear of failure with these people. Imagine the cardinal telling the the chief painter, Michelangelo, that he had up to 3 months to complete it. I wonder whether the Sistine Chapel would have looked as beautiful as it does now, an everlasting symbol of pure genius. So, what is very critical is that the minds that are incubated in absolute fearlessness are those that create the best. And that goes for all of us. That goes for each individual, because I feel each individual within him must tap into that higher level that exists within and tap into that potential, because irrespective of what field we belong to, which discipline we may come from, irrespective of all that, we are absolutely and totally capable of pulling out genius from within us. Unshackle, empower, and grow. Those are the key words. This is a placard of our times. Rampant fear, pressure, constant workplace stress. We're always fighting deadlines. We're always fighting to surmount the insurmountable. And how is it reflecting on us? It's creating work stress in 4 out of 5. 1 out of 4 are struggling with sleep disorder. 1 out of 3 feel that workload is responsible for this. And of course, deadline is the perennial killer here. But there are some others who believe that failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. These are the words of another great current day innovator, a visionary, Elon Musk, co-founder of PayPal and Tesla Motors. It seems exceedingly bucking the trend again. How can you say that failure is an option? If we inwardly reflect and look at the corporate world that we exist within, if there is one thing that is stigmatized more than anything, that is failure, yet fear of failure is one of the greatest stumbling blocks to innovation. So we have to rethink this entire paradigm within us, within our teams, within our corporates and our units. Are we going to have our people create in absolute fear and hope and pray that they will innovate? Or are we going to create conditions? And please don't get me wrong here. What I don't mean is that we set people up for failure or we aspire to fail. No, we accept failure on the journey towards innovation, because failure will happen. But what is more critical is once we surmount failure, we reach a path of growth which is absolutely exponential. These are figures out of the UK budget, and we clearly see how innovation can turn things around. And I feel that we should, take a step back and try and ruminate on what I'm saying here. It's critical that we stand by what we are keen to do, but at the same time, it is essential that we make sure that we create an atmosphere of congeniality in such a way that the entire process becomes more accepting and incubates success. This is one such story that happened in an environment of absolute fearlessness. We all know this name. We all know how Uber has transformed the paradigm of transportation. In fact, there are verbs which now are Uberification and Uberization. Those are terms that have been created around them. They have transformed the entire market. They have re-looked at the paradigm and said, well, we're going to step away from this. We're going to step away from already existent transportation models, and we are going to create something that adds value. Value. That word value is what is really at the core of innovation. So how does innovation happen? Have you ever given that a thought? It's good to talk about innovation. Everybody wants the fruit of innovation, but how does innovation happen? Innovation necessitates a departure from one paradigm. You have to stop thinking about the principles that bind you down to where you were, if you are, to make it to the next level. This is how innovation happens. The people who made sundials or gramophones were not the people who created the first watch or the tape deck. They were people who were not tethered or were not held back by the principles that governed the earlier paradigms. They chose to think differently. Yet they wanted to add value in whichever possible way, and that is what they did. You have to surmount and abandon the previous paradigm if you have to create the next. And that, gentlemen, is what innovation is all about. That is how innovation happens. To innovate, one must have the courage to abandon the present and create a new. Those are the lessons of innovation, and not only innovation, but of evolution. The person who created the first Roman sun clock, the gramophone, had no conception of the tape deck or the watch or the smartwatch and then the iPod. Those are leaps that have happened because people have chosen to abandon the old paradigms. They have decided to create something anew. They have created categories on their own. They have created nomenclatures on their own. This has been the way the story of evolution has gone. So if we are to create anew from where we are, and irrespective of which area we are in, irrespective of which field we are in, we need to start having the courage to abandon the old paradigms. We need to clearly abandon the old paradigms and understand that we must add value and we must look beyond what is existing to reach out for what is thereafter. What is the impact of such a leap? Indeed, you may ask. This is what it is. Companies feel innovation can drive an economy, 95% competition. 91% feel that we can become a far more greener economy, 88% more jobs. We can improve our lives by 90% enhancement in communication, 87% in health quality, 84% in job market, 84% in quality, environmental quality. So you can just imagine if we decided to innovate, if we decided to really tap into the potential that we are all about, what is the exponential leap we would cause in the various areas and in the various fields? It's quite staggering. And we ought to, again, think about how we can bring this within our own spheres. How can we act upon these within our own areas? This is one such story of people, a company called IDEO that decided to change the paradigm of design. It is one of the very few companies where corporate hierarchy is not the big thing. The big thing is creation. The big thing is innovating. The big thing is their design thinking methodology and how they create out of concepts. It is a significant change in paradigm thought. You can imagine if you were not aware of what a mouse was and you were told to create a device that would use to control a screen, how would you come up with such a device? And that's what they did. They're responsible for the first mouse on an Apple Macintosh machine. They've contributed their designs to the Palm handheld personal digital assistant. They work with companies across the spectrum and have had tremendous value. And the key part of this is they have to constantly think of departing from the earlier paradigm. They have to constantly redesign a new paradigm, a new thought, a new area, and it has no connection with or at all with the previous paradigm. That is what is remarkable about the IDEO story, and that is what is remarkable about the way research, design, thinking methodology moves from one step to another. What does innovation do? Why must we also innovate in our times? The yin and the yang? Well, for the customers, it provides a greater product or service experience. Multiple choices, multiple utility, rationalized pricing. This is what we can lay for our customers. Multiple choices, flexibility of use. I want you to think about each of these things. Imagine a great product experience like Google. How does it give you a product experience that's constantly ever widening? The multiple choices across multiple platforms that it gives you, the flexibility of use and how you can use it across various areas, the multiple utility it affords you, and how rationally it's priced, how reasonable it's priced. That's what it does for the customer. It creates a new world. What does it do for the organization? Even more remarkable. It channelizes and optimizes your resources. It makes you more effective. It enables you to scale from one unit, one department, one area to multiple units across your organization. It brings about cost effectiveness. And most important, it opens new vistas. That is how powerful innovation is. That is what innovation does. It creates a whole new paradigm for the customer, a whole new paradigm for the organization. Innovation has created values in business models such as Dell, Walmart, Siebel, GE Capital, Intel Pentium, Microsoft, FedEx, Virgin Atlantic, and Lexus. You can clearly see how each of these companies have taken a section of finance, process, offering, and delivery, chose to innovate within that, and has made a quantum leap. Dell, for example, works on finance and how the enterprise makes money. Walmart on networking, enterprise structure, and value chain. Siebel on process, enable process, assemble core capabilities, and core processes for GE Capital Aviation Services. For Intel, it's about the offering, basic features, performance, and functionality. For Microsoft Office, it is product system, extended system that surrounds an offering. Service, FedEx is how you service your customer. And then, of course, you have Nightdown, Virgin, and Lexus, which develop and innovate in the area of channel, brand, and customer experience. So the idea is to sit back and just try and assimilate what we can do new. What can we try and move that is already at a plane and take it to the next level? What is it that we need to abandon is the courageous part. What is the area that we have to discard? That is another courageous part. And for that, it is essential that we are encouraged, we create for those who report into us an area of fearlessness, so that we can take things to the next plane. And why should we innovate is the next question. Well, let me share a fact with you. Only 43% of those companies which were on the top of the Fortune 500 in 1995 have made the cut in 2015. Well, I leave it to your imagination to realize where the other 57% have gone. Another alarming fact is that the rate of product and service obsolescence has quadrupled in the last decade. Those products and services which were there, they are disappearing at a 4 times faster rate. Yet, organizations are still hell-bent on using initiatives to grow via reducing costs. Only 29% have initiatives to grow via new products and services. There you can see another huge indicator of inertia, where we are constantly gravitating towards a comfort area. We are constantly trying to make sure that we stay within a safe zone. Well, gentlemen, this is actually a leap of faith, and more than a leap of faith, it is a leap of courage that we ought to take. And frankly, I don't think we have an option. We must innovate if we are to evolve to the next level and to add continuous value. And we must innovate if we are to stay relevant. That's the word, relevant. It is very important for us to now look ahead of what we are doing, look ahead to where the world is moving, and it's moving at a breakneck speed. So these are some glaring examples of how the world is changing and why we should innovate. What are the tenets of innovation? I consider these the 7 pillars of wisdom, actually, if you ask me. These are absolute elements which will make sure that they point us in the direction of innovation, or at least encourage innovation. 1, to intend to create value always. Very true. Always create value. Everything else will follow. Be inspired by the world. And I don't know, many of you may have read this in the news very recently, and I found this story that I'm about to relate an great example of that. A 5-year-old, fifth grade student wrote to Elon Musk and told him that he should actually have a competition for his commercial ads. He found the enthusiasm and the innovativeness of this child so moving that he accepted her advice, and he will now be having a competition for commercial ads that run his company. I found that really an enormous example to be inspired by the world. It was a great example. Innovation is a journey, not a destination. We can't innovate for the rest of our lives in the next 3 months and then dust our hands and say, okay, we've innovated. Now let's go and have a cup of coffee. Innovation is something that will have to be woven into the thread, the warp and the weft of every organization. It'll have to go down to the frontline managers and the people who run the company to ensure that they are constantly rethinking of new ways to do their same process in a better way all the time. And that comes to my 4th pillar, which is an anathema in our times. We don't want to share knowledge, and heaven forbid data. We don't want it. It galls us, it scares us, it leaves us vulnerable. But I have a rude awakening for all of us. We need to share data as we need to have other people share their data and knowledge with us, because we are not on this journey alone, and we can't get on this bandwagon alone. It is absolutely critical that we share knowledge and data, we collaborate at every level if we are to take forward the innovation in the way that it's supposed to be. Imagine, but base it on data. Yeah. No flight so fancy here. If there are flights so fancy, then they have to be based on data. The data will ground us and point us in the right direction and enable us to sift from those areas which are absolutely fantastical to those that can really bring value. Be a magnet for new ideas. Be open and inviting to people, to sources for new ideas, because new ideas are the seed that will germinate into innovation. And yes, finally, the big word that we're all scared of, failure is always the first step. Failure is always the first step. I reiterate, this does not mean that we must aspire to fail, but this definitely does mean that when we face failure in the first phase of doing something new, let us not it deter us. Let us not be scared to take it down to the road and make sure that we implement it. The innovation is a process that is very beautifully depicted by the Fibonacci spiral. The Fibonacci spiral, of course, as we all know, starts with the opportunities and challenges, where the opportunities and challenges exist, moving to generating new ideas, and then grounding them, developing them, testing them, making the case to those for why this idea should be implemented, delivering and actually implementing the idea, growing and scaling it, and then, of course, changing the systems. That should be changing the world, your world. That is how an innovation cycle looks at. And it's very important for us to understand that this process is one that will lead us down the road to changing what we are doing for the positive, for enabling us to really look at what we are doing in a different way. Because whether we like it or not, our world is changing so rapidly. We have no option but to be the change, to be the innovation. We are constantly being pushed and compelled to be the change, to be the innovation. So how do we make innovation actionable? Do we want to go down the evolutionary road, or do we want to go down the revolutionary road? Do we have an option to go down the evolutionary road anymore? The evolutionary road is a time and place that has happened. I do not see this as something that will have a place in future. With the global connect so complete and the chaos theory in many ways reality, we have no other option but to leapfrog innovation by going down the revolutionary road. These are 4 quadrants that will enable us to introspect, to enable us to understand how we can really make and create value in innovation within our each jobs. Incremental innovation is something that has been happening. We've been trying to push the tab, but we actually can only leapfrog it when we start observing how our customers work in their natural environments on new channels and deliver value. We can also do that by leapfrogging innovation by observing customers in their natural state on new channels, delivering new types of value again and again. Those are the thoughts that we need to constantly use as a template for within our work, within our areas of expertise. We need to understand that whether we like it or not, revolution in a small way on various fronts is happening as we speak. Trends are being destroyed and created in shorter gaps. The option is very clearly in front of us. Here's a look at the world's most innovative companies. And if you study the way they work, you will understand is they constantly seek to reinvent what they're doing. They constantly look towards their customers to try and find out, given their area of expertise, how is it that they can constantly add new value? Whether it's an old war horse like Unilever or a new one called Salesforce. They are constantly looking to add value to the customers. They are not looking for more lucrative methods of earning money. That is an absolute follow-through of the activity. They just need to add value. Constantly look to make their customers more successful, more forward-thinking, and that's how they want to make sure that they augment their customers with the necessary ammunition so that they can be successful. And that's why they are known as some of the most innovative companies of the world. Finally, the Global Innovation Index. This fills me up with a little bit of pride because we see that India is one of the most innovative nations in the region. Well, whether that innovation is structured, whether that innovation has been indexed in the way that we need to take growth forward, and it needs to be an all-inclusive growth, is another question altogether. But it's a great way to understand how we are innovating. It's a great way to understand what we need to be doing with every process, with every system, how we need to constantly relook at the various initiatives that we are driving and understand what we need to do in terms of adding value to our customers, to our organization on a constant way. On that note, we've invoked some very great names. We've talked about the Renaissance Masters, and we've talked about various other great people on the way. And I want us to start looking at what we are doing in the context of those who have innovated ahead of us. And let that be an inspiration for us to take things forward. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of this, for listening to us and enabling us to add value. I will now open the floor to questions and look forward to answering your questions.